True knowledge, the kind that reshapes the soul, is rarely found in books or theories. It is born instead from direct experience. And more often than not, it is pain that initiates the journey. Pain strips away illusion. It humbles the mind, breaks the ego, and forces us to confront what we would rather avoid. In this way, pain becomes a sacred teacher. Every authentic spiritual insight is tethered to a particular kind of suffering that has been faced, endured, and ultimately transformed. Without this process of transmutation, knowledge remains abstract, unrooted in the soil of real human experience. But when suffering is consciously met, questioned, and embraced, it becomes alchemical. It gives birth to understanding that no external source could ever provide. This is why we often encounter the same type of pain repeatedly, whether in relationships, health, or emotional patterns. Life offers us loops of suffering not to punish us, but to illuminate our blind spots. Each recurrence is a signal. There is something here still unhealed, still unseen. And only when the root cause, whether belief, behavior, or wound, is truly recognized and resolved does the cycle finally break. The process is both mysterious and precise. A pain endured unconsciously will repeat. But once it is brought into awareness, once we trace it back to its source and change the conditions that gave rise to it, it loses its grip. We are no longer held hostage by it. This applies just as much to physical afflictions as it does to emotional and mental suffering. A disease rooted in imbalance will persist until the underlying disharmony is addressed. A pattern of fear or self-sabotage will continue until the false belief behind it is dismantled. Thus, true healing and true wisdom go hand in hand. Insight without transformation is incomplete, and transformation without insight is unstable. But when pain leads to deep seeing, and deep seeing leads to lasting change, the result is liberation. So, rather than fleeing pain or numbing it, the spiritual path invites us to lean in, to listen, to inquire, and to learn. For buried within every wound is a message. And within every hardship, the seed of higher awareness waits to bloom. In this light, suffering is not the enemy of wisdom, it is its silent midwife. 1. The role of pain in physical and mental realms. Pain is one of the most powerful messengers in both the physical and mental dimensions of our being. It signals that something within us is out of balance, an invitation to inquire, reflect, and restore harmony. In the physical realm, humanity has made great strides in identifying the causes of many diseases. Nutritional deficiencies, lifestyle choices, environmental toxins, and genetic predispositions have all been mapped with growing precision. Those who act with wisdom, by aligning their daily choices with natural law and preventative care, can often avoid many of these consequences. Yet, mystery still surrounds countless physical conditions. Chronic illnesses, sudden ailments, and inexplicable dysfunctions continue to baffle even the most advanced scientific minds. Until the underlying energetic, emotional, or karmic causes are fully understood, such disorders will persist, reminding us that not all healing is physical in nature. The realm of mental suffering, however, is often more accessible. Our thoughts, beliefs, and emotional patterns are closer to the surface, available for observation through mindfulness, self-inquiry, and introspection. When mental or emotional pain arises, it is usually possible, with patience and honesty, to trace it back to its origin: a fear, a false belief, a wound from the past, or a story we continue to tell ourselves. Unlike many physical ailments, mental suffering offers a clearer path to transformation. The act of witnessing our inner dialogue without judgment can dissolve long-standing pain. When we shine light on our unconscious habits, those ingrained patterns of reaction and resistance, we begin to see with clarity. And with clarity comes the freedom to choose a new response, to reframe the experience, or to release it altogether. This is not to say that mental healing is easy. On the contrary, it often requires tremendous courage to face the truth of our conditioning, to let go of identities forged in pain, and to forgive ourselves and others. But the tools for this healing are within reach: meditation, dream work, journaling, therapeutic practices, spiritual contemplation. These open the door to deep and lasting change. In essence, pain is a language, one that speaks in symptoms, feelings, and signals. Physical pain may ask us to change how we treat our bodies. Mental pain often urges us to shift how we see ourselves and the world. When we learn to listen rather than resist, both types of pain become sacred guides, leading us not toward suffering, but toward wholeness. 2. Pain and the perfected human. Pain is an inevitable part of the human experience. Whether physical, emotional, or spiritual, it touches every life. But how we respond to pain, how we process and integrate it, can vary dramatically depending on our level of inner development. The perfected human, someone who has achieved clarity of mind and balance within the body, still experiences pain, but their relationship to it is fundamentally different. Physical pain, such as that caused by injury or illness, serves a vital biological purpose. It alerts us to harm and urges us to protect or heal the body. Even the most enlightened individual is not exempt from this kind of pain. What distinguishes the perfected human is not an absence of pain, but a refined response to it. Rather than reacting with fear, resentment, or mental turmoil, they meet pain with acceptance and awareness. Their inner stillness remains unshaken. This mental discipline allows them to feel only the raw physical sensation without layering it with emotional suffering. They do not resist the pain with frustration, nor do they amplify it through catastrophic thoughts. Instead, they observe it calmly, as one might observe a passing storm. This presence of mind can dramatically reduce the overall intensity of suffering, allowing healing to unfold more gracefully. In contrast, the untrained or unaware mind tends to react to pain with resistance. Fear, anger, self-pity, or denial arise almost instinctively, magnifying the pain and often prolonging its effects. A minor injury becomes a major ordeal. Emotional pain becomes entrenched trauma. This mental reaction is often what transforms pain into true suffering. The path to this perfected state is not one of denial, but of deep inner work. It requires the cultivation of mindfulness, emotional regulation, and spiritual maturity. Meditation, self-inquiry, and conscious breathing are just a few tools that allow us to observe pain without being consumed by it. Ultimately, the perfected human teaches us that pain does not need to define our reality. It can be felt fully and responded to consciously. It can even become a teacher, revealing hidden fears, outdated beliefs, or areas in need of healing. When we meet pain with clarity rather than confusion, we begin to transcend it, not by escaping it, but by mastering our response. 3. The illusion of insensibility. There exists a persistent misunderstanding on the spiritual path. The belief that enlightenment is marked by total insensibility to pain. Some equate mastery with detachment so extreme that all physical sensation, including suffering, is eliminated. But this is an illusion, one that can lead the seeker astray. No true spiritual teacher has ever advocated the denial of pain or the cultivation of numbness as a mark of progress. Pain, both physical and emotional, is part of the human condition. It is not a punishment, but a message, an alert system designed to guide and protect. The goal is not to silence it unnaturally, but to understand it and respond from a place of inner wisdom. In certain historical traditions, particularly within schools of Hatha Yoga, practitioners developed extraordinary control over the body. They subjected themselves to extreme austerities, fasting, holding difficult postures for hours, or even enduring fire or cold, to demonstrate detachment from physical sensation. While these feats may appear impressive, they were often criticized by the wisest sages of India, including those of the Vedantic and yogic traditions. These sages referred to such practices as tamasika sadhana, discipline rooted in ignorance and darkness. This form of black yoga was said to stunt spiritual growth by fixating on control rather than understanding. True spiritual development does not seek to mute the senses but to master the self. The authentic path, such as Raja Yoga or the Royal Path, emphasizes inner transformation, calming the mind, refining the emotions, and awakening the heart. Its practices include meditation, ethical living, self-reflection, and devotion, not self-punishment or denial of the body. Likewise, in the Christian tradition, Christ did not teach escape from suffering, but transfiguration through it. His path was one of humility, forgiveness, and surrender, not through repression of pain, but through its spiritual alchemy. He bore suffering not to glorify it, but to show that love can transcend even the deepest wounds. To feel pain is not weakness, it is part of the embodied experience. The illusion lies not in the sensation itself, but in believing that the absence of pain equals spiritual advancement. The wise do not seek insensibility, they seek equanimity. They do not avoid pain, they allow it, understand it, and rise above it. In this lies the true power, not immunity, but clarity. Not numbness, but presence. 4. Mental pain and the softening of the heart. In our pursuit of spiritual growth, it is tempting to seek escape from mental pain by becoming emotionally numb. Many mistake stoicism or detachment for strength, thinking that to suffer less, one must feel less. But this is a misunderstanding. True strength does not lie in the hardening of the heart, but in its gentle, conscious softening. Mental pain, like physical pain, is a signal, an invitation to look deeper. When we suppress it or build walls to shield ourselves from it, we do not transcend the pain, we merely postpone its reckoning. Over time, this avoidance leads to a form of spiritual stagnation. The heart, once vibrant and responsive, becomes calloused and indifferent. And from that hardened place, true love, compassion, and wisdom struggle to emerge. Rather than running from emotional pain, we are called to walk through it with tenderness and courage. This process requires the cultivation of virtues, not as lofty ideals, but as practical tools of transformation. Kindness softens judgment. Forgiveness dissolves resentment. Patience cools frustration. Justice realigns distorted perspectives. These virtues are not only moral values, they are spiritual medicines that begin to unravel the roots of suffering. As we consistently choose these higher responses, something subtle but profound occurs. The origin of our pain begins to surface. Perhaps it is a belief we've long held, a fear buried deep, or an unexamined habit of mind. With clarity and compassion, we begin to see it not as a fixed reality, but as a wound asking to be healed. And as we continue practicing goodness, not as performance, but as truth, those inner knots begin to loosen. Eventually, the specific thought pattern or emotional wound that once triggered suffering begins to lose its grip. We do not force it away, we outgrow it. In time, it ceases to appear at all, its lesson learned, its energy transmuted. Mental pain, then, is not our enemy. It is our teacher. But we must approach it not with resistance or fear, but with open-hearted awareness. To soften the heart is not weakness, it is the highest form of strength. For it is only through softness that we become truly receptive to truth, healing, and the light of the soul. 5. From pain to knowledge. Pain, when approached with awareness, becomes one of life's greatest teachers. Every experience of suffering, emotional, physical, or spiritual, carries within it a hidden seed of wisdom. But that seed only germinates when the pain is neither denied nor blindly endured, but instead met with conscious inquiry. When we suffer, we are forced to pause. The noise of daily life quiets, and our attention is drawn inward. In this stillness, we begin to ask questions we might otherwise avoid. Why am I hurting? What pattern am I repeating? What truth am I resisting? This process, though uncomfortable, can spark a powerful shift. As we begin to understand the root of our suffering, whether it's a false belief, a suppressed emotion, or an unexamined desire, we also begin to free ourselves from it. With that clarity comes a deeper kind of knowledge, not information gathered from the outside, but truth revealed from within. This inner knowledge is sacred. It grounds us in equanimity, even when life is uncertain. While others may oscillate between fleeting joy and despair, the wise person stands steady, rooted not in avoidance of pain, but in mastery over its message. From this standpoint, pain is no longer seen as an obstacle to peace, but as a portal to it. Each time we meet suffering with awareness, courage, and humility, we are purified. Ignorance, ego, and illusion, these are burned away in the fire of conscious suffering, and what remains is essence, strength, clarity, and compassion. It is for this reason that the saints, sages, and mystics throughout history did not curse their trials, but embraced them. They understood that true wisdom is forged in the crucible of difficulty, and that without pain, the soul might remain asleep, unawakened to its true purpose. In the end, the goal is not to escape suffering, but to transform it, to use it as a mirror, a compass, and a forge. Pain, when alchemized, becomes light. And that light does not flicker with circumstance. It shines steadily from the depths of the soul, illuminating the way for others still trapped in darkness. 6. The alchemy of suffering. Suffering, though painful and often unwelcome, carries within it a sacred potential. It acts as a signal, alerting us that something is misaligned in our being. Whether the root lies in our thoughts, actions, beliefs, or unhealed wounds, pain invites us to turn inward, to reflect with honesty and courage. This inward journey is the first step of alchemy, the ancient spiritual art of transformation. Just as raw metals are placed into a furnace to be purified and shaped, so too must the soul pass through fire. But this fire is not external. It is the heat of awareness, the light of truth, and the discomfort of confronting what we've avoided. In the crucible of suffering, illusions begin to dissolve. Misconceptions about who we are, what we deserve, and how the world works are stripped away. False identities, outdated narratives, and toxic patterns rise to the surface, not to punish us, but to be seen, acknowledged, and transmuted. This is the sacred work of inner alchemy. Through this process, suffering becomes more than just a wound, it becomes a forge. Every painful experience, when met with conscious reflection and spiritual sincerity, becomes raw material for growth. The seeker begins to recognize that the pain was not senseless. It was pointing towards something essential, an unhealed truth, a forgotten lesson, or an ignored calling. As the purification deepens, the soul becomes lighter, clearer, more aligned with divine wisdom. What was once darkness becomes insight. What was once fear becomes humility. What was once confusion becomes clarity. And in that clarity, we not only understand ourselves more deeply, we open to higher levels of consciousness, empathy, and grace. This is why the mystics and sages of every tradition speak of suffering not as punishment, but as passage. It is not meant to break us, but to refine us. The goal is not to avoid pain, but to allow it to awaken us, to burn away all that is false, so that what is eternal may remain. In the end, the soul that has walked through suffering with open eyes and an open heart emerges not wounded, but reborn, transformed, ready to carry the light it found in the fire into the world. 7. A catalyst for growth and awakening. Pain, when seen through the lens of spiritual wisdom, is not a curse but a catalyst. It breaks open the protective shells we build around ourselves, the illusions of control, comfort, and certainty, and reveals what lies beneath. It interrupts our routines, disrupts our assumptions, and demands our attention. And in doing so, it becomes the very force that initiates inner transformation. Where comfort often fosters stagnation, pain provokes movement. It pushes us beyond familiar boundaries and forces us to confront what we've ignored. Whether physical, emotional, or spiritual, suffering acts as a mirror, reflecting where growth is needed. In this way, pain is not the opposite of progress, it is often the precondition for it. Those who walk the path of wisdom come to understand this paradox. Rather than resisting pain or numbing themselves to its message, they lean into it with presence and humility. They ask, what is this trying to teach me? Where have I strayed from alignment? What in me needs to evolve? Through these questions, pain becomes sacred, a teacher that burns away illusion and forges strength. It invites us to develop compassion not only for ourselves, but for others. We begin to recognize suffering in those around us, no longer from a distance, but from shared experience. And in that shared recognition, empathy blossoms. In the crucible of pain, the ego is softened, and the soul begins to shine through. We discover courage we didn't know we had. We uncover truths that had long been buried. And we find within ourselves a depth of resilience, grace, and wisdom that can only be born through the fire. This is the quiet alchemy of awakening. From the ashes of brokenness, new vision arises. From grief, deeper love. From struggle, higher purpose. Pain becomes the sacred gate through which we walk toward our most authentic self. And when we emerge, clearer, humbled, and renewed, we are not only changed for ourselves. We become vessels of insight and healing for others. Our wounds, once raw and confusing, now carry light. Our journey, once painful, becomes medicine. For in truth, it is not suffering that transforms us, it is what we choose to become through it. Conclusion: the sacred role of suffering. The journey of awakening is rarely smooth. It is carved not just by moments of peace and revelation, but by the sharp edges of pain, loss, and uncertainty. Yet in the grand architecture of the soul's evolution, suffering holds a sacred purpose. It is the fire that tempers the steel of our spirit, the chisel that sculpts away illusion, the night through which the light of wisdom is born. Suffering, when embraced consciously, reveals what comfort often hides. It exposes the attachments we cling to, the beliefs that no longer serve us, and the ego's desperate grip on control. In this vulnerability, we are invited to surrender, not in weakness, but in trust. Not to give up, but to give in, to a deeper intelligence guiding our growth. The path to self-mastery is not about escaping pain, but transforming our relationship to it. The purified soul learns not to resist suffering with fear or resentment, but to inquire into its message. What is life trying to teach me? What part of me is being asked to evolve? Through this sacred inquiry, suffering becomes a teacher, a mirror, a threshold. With each trial consciously faced, the soul becomes more radiant, more humble, more whole. Emotional storms give way to inner stillness. Mental anguish is replaced by clarity. Even physical discomfort becomes bearable when held within a spacious and awakened awareness. Eventually, a profound realization dawns: pain itself is not the enemy. It is the unconscious reaction to it, the fear, the story, the resistance, that causes lasting harm. Once these reactions are burned away, pain may still arise, but it no longer binds. In this transmutation, we find freedom. We no longer seek to escape what hurts. We seek to see it clearly. And through that clarity, we gain insight into the greater truth, that all things, even suffering, are instruments of grace. The awakened being no longer curses the fire. They bless it. For it was the fire that revealed their true nature. The gold beneath the dross. The stillness beyond the storm. And so we come to see that nothing is wasted on the path. Not even the pain. Especially not the pain